Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Mary, seat of wisdom,
pray for us.
in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Okay, so you receive two series of documents. One is containing all the text we have to use to the end of the semester. Soon, we have only 2 more classes after this class. And you have the compendium, the text for, it will be useful today, but also for another class when we speak about international organization. So that is very, very important for your information and for your formation. So the problem of the nations, first remark, nations and country are not synonymous. A country can be made with many nations, and a nation can be in many countries. So that is the difference, and that exactly. Sometimes we identify nation and country, but it's not always strictly exact, correct. So here we speak about nations, but anyway, when we speak about nations, we include also the countries where those nations. So the nation is more attached to the people, and a country is more attached to the borders. Sometimes, for example, you have Acadian, they are nation, and they are on New Brunswick, Nova Scotia in Canada, but they are on Maine, because when they divide the country, Canada, United States, divided the nation into parts. In fact, they are in 2 countries, but they are on, say, one nation, Acadian. So we have many cases of that, especially when they divided Africa. The same tribe is in many countries, many countries. So the problem in the history is each state wants to be sovereign. In fact, the characteristic of a state, it is to be sovereign. So there is, in fact, if you look at the United Nations or the United States of America, every state has the same representation. California and Wyoming and New York and Rhode Island, they have the same number of senators, no? California is a huge state, has 2 senators. Wyoming, they are more horses than people, but they have 2 senators. That means states are equal in right. It's not according to the dimension of the state. China has 1 vote, United States has 1 vote, United Nations, and Cayman Island has 1 vote. So no superior. In fact, there is no nation superior to other nation. In right. Understand what I mean? For example, when you are in Washington, the Senate, Rhode Island has 2 representatives, Alaska 2 representatives, and California 2 representatives. We don't look at the number of persons. It is the right of the nation, the right of the state. Okay? So the problem on the above nations, there is no real efficient superior authority. We go to the United Nations in New York, there is no authority. The authority is a moral authority, but there is no a country above all the other countries. All countries are equal. So we must be aware of that. And that is, I will say, the respect for everyone, but at the same time is a problem also. Because we have to make all those countries to work in harmony. And we see what happened now in the Middle East, in many places, how it's difficult to make the countries working together. Why? Because every country also defends its own interest. So yeah, politics is always a fight between the common good and the personal interest. Huh? That is, and they don't have the gospel, huh? Blessed the poor, blessed the humble, etc., to guide them. Huh? So we have to find a way to live together. So how we arrive to the international relation. The international relation is very old. Yeah, I would say as old as countries existed. But the international law, we have now, we have an international law. So how that international law was prepared? If you go to the ancient nation, in the first time you go to 1,500 years, 2,000 before Jesus Christ, in fact, another nation was considered as an enemy. And there was continual fight in the Middle East between the Hittite and the other country, because there was not agreement, international agreement at that time. So who were the first to create a kind of international law? Were the Romans. Why? Because the Romans conquered a lot of countries, and they have to make all those countries live together. Those countries, they were enemy before. Now they are in the same empire. So we have to make a law to control them. And that law is, we saw that the jus gentium, the jus gentium, the right of the nations. So what they did, the Romans, they took the best in every legislation, what was common to all those legislation, and they tried to arrive to a certain consensus about all those countries in such a way that every country were able to stay in the Roman Empire and at the same time to continue to keep their own identity. The Romans, they never asked people to become Roman. They never want to what do you say that? To make them, to transform all the countries in the same way of living, same values. For example, they did not impose Latin. In fact, the international language was the Greek. Is the reason why the Gospel was written in Greek. Huh? So it was the Greek. So the Roman, their genius was to be able to have a law able to make all those countries living in peace, Gaul, Spain, Britain, and the Medes and the Persians together, at the same time keeping their own identity. They were not assimilated to the Roman. And they were not assimilated to them. So they kept their language. The problem was sometimes for religion. Sometimes they accept, for example, for the Jews, they say, okay, keep your religion, no problem. As long as you don't menace our own religion in Rome, the God of Rome. So that is the jus gentium. And that jus gentium has a great influence. Why? Because the Romans were probably the first to arrive to prepare a very clear international laws or international lines to guide the people, to guide nations between them. So the influence of the Roman. But at the same time, what happened in the Roman Empire? Christianism arrived. At the same time the Roman Empire were expanding, the gospel, the message of Jesus arrived. And little by little, the influence of the Catholic Church was spreading. And what happened? Those nations who were enemies became Christian. Or the German, for example, the Anglo-Saxon, the Irish, the Hungarian, all those nations, they were enemies. Now they are Christian. So they have to live in peace. And who will influence that? It will be the Catholic Church. So here you see, at the Middle Age, little bit more and more, the Pope has a great influence in international relation. And little by little, a code, a kind of law, a series of laws was accepted by many countries. For example, the code of chivalry. So when they died, have to fight, they have to respect some laws, you know. They have to respect the civil people. And they killed only those who were soldiers. So they have some Christian values, and those Christian values influence their international relation. You know, that is different. Today we say the problem is the ISIS as another values and religion, and when they want to fight with others, but that the religion especially Christianism, was a way to unify the world, to unify Europe, and after that to unify South America. So that is an embryo of international law. And at the same time also the church created the canon law. So the canon law was everywhere the same. In Czechoslovakia, in Hungary, in Austria, in Germany, in England, the canon law. So the canon law it was not an international law, but it was a law applied in all those countries where they were Christian. So there was a kind of unity, and more. But the first who work on that, there are three persons who have the origin of their international law. They are Vittoria, Francisco de Vittoria is a Dominican, Vittoria. You have Suarez, but it's interesting, both of them are called Francis. Francis Vittoria, Francis Suarez, a Jesuit. And you have after that Grotius. I think he was a Protestant from Netherlands, but he lived in France. So they are we can say, they were very attentive to codify, to create international law. And Vittoria was born in 1492. What happened in that year? The discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. So that it was the time, more and more, it was necessary to have international laws. So so Grotius in particular was the one who wrote about this international law. He wrote a book entitled, for example, The Right of War and Peace. The Right of War and Peace. So that now European and South American, in America, more and more, they were influenced by that international law. We need an international law. For example, only think about trade. How we can trade without international law? Think about traveling, airplane. If every country has not an agreement with other country, how is it possible for a plane to land without crashing? International law, now it is a reality. But that reality was made little by little. So we can see that from Grotius now we have an international law. And that international law was codified, if you want, precise, very well with the creation of the United Nations. How do you say in English? You know? United Nations in 1945 in San Francisco. Because the United Nations was created in San Francisco in 1945, and they decided to settle in New York. So if you visit New York, you should visit also the United Nations building. Where is the central of where is I will say, the core, the center of the international law, international relation. Now, what is international law? Can we have, we know a law? What is a law? Normally, a law necessitates a legislator, and the legislator to comment must have an authority. Here in Connecticut, you have some laws for speed, for example. But we have an authority, we have police. Sometimes blue and red, and they say, Mr. Sister, you go too fast. Or you know, it's written 90, wrote 90. You must respect the law. There is an authority. But the problem of international law, where is the authority? That is the big problem. It is the difficulty because the authority is in fact a moral authority. A moral authority. We have to finally to go to the conscience of the people. And we have some ways of controlling, we call sanctions. But the sanctions are not imposed by an authority, they are imposed by the others. They are voted by the Council of Security. So what are the rules? First, in the building of the international law, so we have writers, those who thought about that. Victoria, you have another also, but the three most important. You have also the treaties, because during centuries, nations have to make some agreement. So the treaties made between countries for centuries became the foundation of that international law. We have the archives. That means even the time of the Hittite, and we have papers, we have bricks, so we can be inspired by even those very, very old codes of the past. Hammurabi Code, for example. We have the diplomatic correspondence. The diplomacy was practiced a long time. Sometimes a king sent a herald to another king to see if there is not possibility for agreement. We see that in the gospel. When the other is coming, try to use diplomacy before using your sword. So all those acts of diplomacy in the past were also influencing the way we today we have our international relations. In fact, the international laws are not made suddenly by a man who sat down and wrote that. No, it is the fruit, the result of many facts and many actions of many men before us. We have also the Court of Justice, especially in the British way of British legislation. The precedents, that means what happened before, how the problem was settled before, are very important. We call the precedents. So the precedents are also constituting. So if you took all those things, we can now have a kind of international law. That international law has value only if a state recognizes it. Because nobody can impose the international law. If you go to the United Nations, those countries are there voluntarily. And when they are there, they commit themselves to respect the international law. But there is no authority. For example, when the countries are submitted to other countries, for example, in the time of Canada and India, Australia, they were submitted to Roman Empire, British Empire. We have to make an act of obedience to the Queen or to the King, But in the United Nations, there is no Queen, there is no King. There is no Emperor, there is no superior. So it is a personal, the nation accept to the rule of the international organization. It is on a voluntary basis. It is conventional. It is a convention. Okay? So the United Nations is the fruit of the will of man. Is the fruit of the will, because we want to, but the necessity of international relations, that is not the will of man. That is based on our nature as a social being. We need to have good relations between families and between countries. And that is a necessity. based on nature, but the fact of the meeting of those nations together in one organization, international organization, it is on the goodwill of the people. So we may never forget that. Is the reason why if Iran, for example, decide to do something, it's difficult, we cannot enter with our guns and bombs to settle the problem. We see that also. It's the reason why many countries, for example, when they are killing people, they don't intervene because, you know, I must respect the autonomy of the others. You know? Sometimes it's a way to not to do something, not to intervene. No? Okay? And sometimes we find a pretext to intervene. Now, the condition to be a state. So how a country can affirm we are not a state, we are a nation, and we can belong to international organization, to be recognized as a country. First, there must be a self-sufficient development, a self-sufficient rule. That means a country, even a little country, is able to assure a little bit as organization, political organization. Is it necessary to be totally self-sufficient to be a nation? No. Can you find in the international community only one country able to satisfy by itself every need it has? No. Every country depends on another country. Even the United States depend on another. Even China depend on another. Why? Depend on another because for industry, we depend on the copper of another. We depend on the meat. We depend on another. We depend on the oil. You know. So we are dependent one on the other. So when we speak about independence, is self-sufficient. For example, if Jamaica is able to organize its own laws, organize its own society, justice, without anarchy, so they can be recognized as a nation. And they have a full jurisdiction on their own citizens. So when the state has jurisdiction on its territory, it can be recognized as a nation. You have a good example of that. It is in at the end 1990, at Sarajevo. You remember when the Czechoslovakia, no, excuse me, when the Yugoslavia was divided in Serbia, there was a lot of fight. And some part of that were not recognized immediately by nation. Sarajevo, so Bosnia and Herzegovina, when they were recognized, when the majority of the great nation and the majority recognized them. So that means that the recognition of a country depends on the other countries. It's interesting. Huh? That means that if Puerto Rico become a country, it will be recognized as a country by China, by all those. And at that time, it can be accepted to the United Nations. And that is interesting about the problem of Palestinian. Palestinian, they don't have a territory, precise territory. They have a little territory. But they are present at the United Nations. That means the majority of the country in the world recognize them as a political entity. But they don't have really, actually, the control of all their own destiny. They depend on Israel. And that is a problem. So Israel is a United Nation, and Palestinians are represented there. So, I know. We are dependent. Every country is dependent on another country. And the little country, the small countries, are recognized country by the others. It's not necessary to say Quebec decides to be independent, to be recognized by the other. And when they recognize that, then they have some reason for recognizing that. So in Yugoslavia was one country, that is four. Czechoslovakia was one country, that they are two. There is a possibility of changing. And all those changes must be recognized by the international community. So there must be international law to control the relation between different countries. And if you go to the internet, to United Nations, you'll be surprised to see the number of international regulation, international law we have is incredible. Bon, we have international regulation for copyright, for example, international regulation for post office. A lot, incredible. I was surprised myself when I studied that, but when I refer to the number of international organizations regulating the international relation, it is huge, a huge number of that. Labor, for example, for health, international, for food and organization. There are many organizations. I don't have time to speak about that today, but you know, yes, brother.
Who pays for all the international? Is it everyone?
Good question. Good question. They are supposed to pay according to their power, you know. In fact, who are the great powers? United States, Europe, and China and Russia. So, in fact, I work with UNESCO. UNESCO, it is the organization for intellectual formation, alphabetization, art, etc. And the problem it was there, because almost 90% of the finance was made by the United States. And when the United States were not happy, they say, okay, no more money. That is a touchy question. You know why? Because not every nation has the same finance, same money. Huh? You know? And not everyone wants to participate. You know, the problem, there is no boss, leader, to say, hey, you pay your tithe, pay. So someone, or if they don't agree with the law, they say, no, I don't agree, I don't pay. You know? But in fact, every nation should invest in that. In my country, for example, we invest a lot in the we call the blue beret. And you know, the United Nations has and they don't have an army, but they have a kind of peace corps. In that, the great part is paid by our country. But the functioning of United Nations is paid a great part by the United States. Great part by the United States. So we thank you. But theoretically, everybody must pay a part of that, and that is a fact. But that is a danger. You know, it's a danger to be paid by only one country or the majority of a few countries, become dependent on them. You know, when the United Nations, the United States or China or Russia propose something, some countries are interested to vote in the same direction, no? Understand that? Huh? We call that a kind of clients. Huh? In fact, we are clients. Well, that is an old word in the Roman Empire. Huh? To be a client in the Roman Empire, to be one attached to a family. And to deal with that family. I have a client. So we have some country they are attached to. In the time of the Cold War, it was very clear. When Russia, USSR was taking a decision, we have all the countries, China, Vietnam, Congo, Brazza, all those countries, they voted in the same size. It was difficult for Congo, Brazza to say, I vote on the side of the United States, you know. There is limit, not everything is perfect on earth. Huh? But it is better to have international relations than not to have. It's better to have some regulation. Imagine if there was no international law on economy, on exchange of money, on trade, international law on health. Any country can sell any kind of junk, any kind of poison to another. So it is necessary, otherwise we are condemned to death. Because we fight continually. It is better to have international law than to be enemy. Even with international law, we are not always very good friends. Imagine if there was no international law, it would be a catastrophe. Huh? Okay, now the moral aspect of the international law. But of course the problem, I told you, there is no authority above the international law. So they refer to the natural law. They say it is the natural law that is underlying, sustaining, animating the international relation. That is the theory accepted by Robert Bellarmine by the Catholic. It is the position we have. No? But some other, they say no. No, because those who don't accept what we see in ethics, we see that the same in international relation. Those say the law is based on natural law, and those who say no, the law is based on convention. You remember that contract, huh? When we study what is a state, some states are based on natural law, according to some philosopher. Huh? Other philosophers, they say no, the state is based on contract, on the contract. And there is another position. They say, yes, a part is on natural law, a part is on contract. But the part on natural law, it is for yourself. Huh? It is for your own way of living. In your own country, do that, etc. But at the international aspect is only a contract. So there are many separation between legality and morality. But anyway, when they speak when they intervene at the United Nations, they try to call to the conscience of the people. Finally, even those who are at the top of a country, they have a conscience. And we try to, when the Pope, Paul VI, and John Paul II, and soon Francis, they go to United Nations in New York, they will speak to them. They will speak to their conscience. Because if there is no conscience, a law has no value. No? If there is a conscience, and what is the conscience? What is the central of the message of the Church in regard of international law? The center, the summit, it is the respect of the human person. When Pope Francis in September, he will come to New York and he will speak to the United Nations. Think about that. I'm sure he will speak about the respect of the human person. And that is not conventional. That is natural. That is based. That respect of the human person is not in a convention. Oh, okay, by convention, I will respect your human person. No. I respect your human person because that is in my nature and in your nature. We are human by nature, we are not human by convention. And that's exactly the same problem with the gender. They teach the gender now. We are a man not by nature, we are a man by will. So I am a girl, but I want to be a man, I am a man. I am a boy, I want to be a woman, I am a woman, And that is exactly that. It's exactly that. Exactly that. We try to reduce morality, ethics, to a kind of convention. I am okay, you are okay. You practice abortion, I don't practice. Respect me, I respect you. I want to be, I can change my gender, no problem. Gender is not a question of nature, it's a question of convention, the will of man. It is through your will you become a woman. It is through your will you become a child, a man. And that is taught in school. We call that the theory of gender. They introduced that now in France, and people are furious, and they are right. How we can by our will change our gender? But that men want to control nature. Here you see the two meanings of nature. The nature we have, when we say it is the creation of God, and God acts through our nature. But the nature has the law of science, and men can manipulate those laws. The two meanings of nature. Okay, so the The first column, say we are bound in conscience. The other, we are bound by contract. I will not attack you. You will not attack me by contract. It is exactly what they are doing now with Iran, no? They try to make a contract. So the peace will be based on the contract, not on the respect of the nature, the human person, etc. And that is a tendency. Huh? And that tendency comes from nominalism, comes from Descartes also, to separate faith and reason, to separate what is the domain of economy, the domain of personal life. And Kant, the great philosopher, Kant, he made a distinction between legality and morality. Legality and morality. And it is the world in which we live. We live in that world. We don't live in the world of natural law. We live in the world where there is a separation between church and state. What is that? Is that easy? The church is for morality. The state is for legality. So you have to understand that when you fight for life and when you fight against abortion. Think about that. For us, it is nature. For them, it is legality. And legality in democracy is made by the number. So that is, you must be aware of that. Is the reason why, for example, I can be a good Christian on Sunday and sing songs in my Protestant temple or Masonic temple, and during the week I can crush the poor. That is business. Business has no conscience. But, you know, that is the word, it is a kind of dichotomy. I say sometimes we are schizophrene. We divide our personality. One is for God, one is for Mammon. God on one side, Mammon on the other side. You know, Muslim, we should never date the left hand to a Muslim. You know that. It's an insult. That is for the bad. That is for the good. We have the tendency, manichaeist. Okay. Now, a word about might and right. In international relations, there is two realities confronting continually. It is the power, the right, the might, the force, and the right. The might and the right. You know, when Jamaica or Haiti or little Nicaragua, you know, little countries are in relation with the United States, with China, with US, with Russia, you know. It is a little and a giant, no? So the might is in the end of the powerful, but the right is the end of even the weak. In fact, what is the protection of the weak, of the humble, the little, is the right. If there was no right, it would be completely crushed. So the right is a call, is a moral power, and the right is a moral power over might. The right is a moral power over might. That means you call to the conscience of the mighty to respect you. You cannot use your fist, you cannot use your gun. You call their conscience. You say, hey, I am a person, respect me. I am your brother, little brother, and little sister. So that is the state. Every state has rights, even large or little, but not every state has might. So that is a central question in ethics. A right does not make, might does not make right. But historically speaking, in many even in the history, might made right. So the abuse of the right. So it's the reason why there is international organization. The international organization, but this is something very, very recent in the history. And the first was in 1999, on the League of the Nations, 1999. And it was a fiasco, it was a failure. Huh? It was a failure. In 1945, after the Second War, they say, hey, let us be serious, let us be clear in our organization. In fact, it is better to have something than to have nothing. And, you know, 1945, maybe for you is very far, because you were not born, but it's not far. In the history of the world, it is very recent. We begin to obey, to deal with international relations. It's a new, and that is interesting because that happened just before the expansion of television, the expansion of telephone, the expansion of the internet. And now we are in international relations. Look at the class here. Canadian, Vietnamese, American, South American, African. The United Nations is here. It was impossible when I was a young kid. I remember the first time in my life, I was on my street, it was a park in front of my house. I was with my little tricycle. For the first time in my life, I saw a black man passing in front of me. I never saw a black man in my life before I was 10 years old. On my street. For me, it was like an alien. No, it's true. And when we went, not far from my house, we have a Chinese family. They were washing clothes. And when we entered there, we were almost afraid. Hey, Chinese, he put the thing in rapidly, we went out. And today, we go to China, my sister went to China, and they went to South America. And you are here, in the belly of your former enemy. Think about that, it is incredible. The evolution and happily, the creation of United Nations happened just on time to regularize the international relations. I never, you know, when I saw my first black man on the street, I never thought I would spend 20 years in Africa. So the state, in fact, has the same right as a person. The state is a corporate reality. So what we study in the ethics about the right of the person, we can apply that to the society. And it is natural for people to, you know, the foundation of the state for us is natural. Well, you have to come back to what we study in the first part of the semester, the root, how the state was created. Someone, this is natural, someone, it is by contract, remember that. Huh? But what was said at the level of a nation, it is said also at the level of many nations together. So a nation has the power, is a moral person, able to possess, able to have right, huh? And because it is a human person, it is a moral person, but it is the virtue of morality, the virtue, central virtue, justice. So there is no internal relation if there is no international justice. So and because we have internal justice, we must international law. You know, international law, international justice, they go together. They go together. Okay? So the virtue of justice is, I will say, is the form, is the soul of the relation between nations. If there is no justice, respect of each one, the gift each one is due, there will be a state of injustice, and the state of injustice provoke, we call war. War is the fruit of injustice, abuse. And we have a chapter on that. We reflect on war in the class, war, because it is a sad reality, but war and peace. Peace is most, it's better to speak about peace than to speak about war. But you cannot speak about war, about peace without war. That means, theoretically, we can be totally at peace, but peace is always menaced by a virus that was never killed, the virus of war. Man was always at war. Find a century where there was no war. You know the history, you study the history of the war. Huh? War. War between Athens and Sparta. War between Rome and Carthago. Huh? War. And sometimes some historians say the history of the humanity is the history of wars. But if there is wars, there is injustice. And to fight against injustice, you must have regulation. We must have a moral authority. And that moral authority, now we have it. It's not perfect, but it's better than nothing. We call that the United Nations organization. So the virtue of justice rests on the fact that men have the equal right. You are little or big, as a human being, you have equal right. Equal duties also. Okay. So within the society there is subordination. In fact, as soon as you speak about justice, you speak about law, you speak about authority, you speak about subordination. That means, if we want to have some peace, we must have a leader, we must have a factor, some authority able to organize, to codify, to sustain the good relation between the person. So that is, in fact, the central problem of international relations is here. How we can help people to live in justice in regard of one with another. I don't speak about love here, I speak about justice, because there is no love if there is no justice. So the problem is to install justice in our relation. And now we have 2 or 3 other lessons coming now, and you will see that those lessons stress on one thing, the injustice in the world. We live in a very unjust world. And you have text for that, you have statistics, read that, and you see that even in this country, there is injustice. Some are excessively rich, and or they have not just to eat. They have to say, "Oh, Uncle Sam gave me some stamps," because I cannot be autonomous. No? So the equal right, that is important. No? Every country should be respected. Of course, when I speak about Cayman Island, I speak about Russia and China. Well, they are equal, but at the same time, they are not equal. They are equal in right, but they are unequal in might. Unequal in might. And what is the big challenge today is to control the might, the army, the armament, the bombs. What is the problem with Iran? It is to avoid that Iran uses nuclear energy to produce a bomb. Because some fanatic, we see what, the fanatics are very dangerous. The minorities are very dangerous when they become fanatic. Some fanatics, they want to impose to others a lot of their conviction and the entity, every means, including killing, and killing hundred and killing even using any kind of arm. That is the big preoccupation. Okay? That we speak about that on television now, the news every day. The discussion with Iran is not innocent. It's very, very important. We must control. The control of armament is the control of might. Might. You know, when you pray to God, what do you say in English? Almighty. God, Almighty. Totally powerful. But no country should be called Almighty United States, Almighty Russia, Almighty China. No. But they are mighty, but they must control their might. And we cannot control them. So what we are doing, we call to their conscience. Finally, we have no means other than to call to the right, conscience. Conscience, recognizing the right of others. Now, if you look at the nations and internal relations, what are the characteristics, everyone, the right and the duty of a state? And Father Faculty has that paragraph on the right and duty of a state. And the right and duty of a state also can be considered at the level of international relations, because every state has the same right. So when they are together, they must know those rights and respect one another. For the first right is independence. So when we speak about the independence, we speak about the right to self-defense. The right to self-defense. The right, I don't say the might. The right. So if I cannot defend myself, I can ask my brother, my good friend, my big brother, good friend, to help me to respect my right. You know? So that is the right of given to other nations to intervene in the case of real abuses. For example, it is the reason President Bush used to intervene in Iraq. It was to suppress a man, a system who was oppressing the people. Was oppressing, menacing with the bomb and killing with poison, gas, poison, you know. There must be a reason for a country to intervene in another. One of the reasons, the good reason, it is the defense of the right, self-defense. Well, the country is not able. For example, you are on the street, you see a little boy, a little girl, and a big dog, woof, is menacing the little, and when you would do something to save the little boy, you know, you intervene to protect. Why you do that? Because the child has a right to self-defense, but he cannot exercise that right. So you exercise the right for her, or for him, to protect. You know? Secondly, the right to peaceful and orderly existence. Peaceful and orderly. Orderly don't mean a kind of law, justice, and the police, and the military, and peaceful existence. The ideal is peace. Peace in justice, peace in order. Don't forget, there is no peace if there is no justice. There is no peace if there is no order. Order and justice is for the respect of the human person. No? It's not to protect the American or Canadian account in a Cayman Island. If ever we have to intervene, it is to protect the human person. So no interference if it is not necessary. So every state has a right to that. For example, the Ukraine has the right to be peaceful. But Big Brother wants to take a part of Ukraine. He took a part of Ukraine when he took Crimea. No? You know the history last year. It happened 2 years ago. The violation of international law, the violation of international right are under our nose. We see that today. What happened in Ukraine? what happened in Syria, in all those countries, but it is exactly that. People are not, have no peace. People are completely in disorder. They are destroyed. No? It is a right for a country to be sure to have peace, security, no? Security. Okay. States have the right to grow and the right also to separate. It's changed. You know, we are not fixed. If you look at the map of Europe in 19, and you follow the map of Europe in 19 up to 2015, you will see that the color and the division change. In 75 years, in 100 years, it's incredible the number of changes in the map of Europe. And recently, Yugoslavia, for example, Czechoslovakia, the divide is the change, you know. And when some countries are annexed or they are free, they are separated. What is the desire now of ISIS is to create a caliphate, a new country with a new organization as it was 1,000 years ago, you know. Those changes are today. In fact, there is no stability on the map, political map. The political map is changing continually, and changing for many reasons. And one of the reasons is the might, the instinct of domination, the instinct of possession, the instinct of controlling. China, for example. China is an empire. What is an empire? What is the difference between a kingdom and an empire? An empire includes many kingdoms. And when the people are in one empire, how they can stay together? Only by might. Might is the cement of an empire. No empire cannot stay together without a strong might, a strong military, strong army. And China is an empire for 2,500 years. And you remember, maybe when you watch the opening of the Olympic Games in China, you remember that? It was marvelous, huh? And many people passed in front of the camera with many kind of robes and dressing, and it is said they are the people representing the 57 different countries in China. China is made is a puzzle. Who hold the puzzle together? The power of the emperor. Today is the power of the Communist Party. For me, the day China, there is no central power, there is no more power, it is the destruction of China. China would be broke in many, many countries, like Yugoslavia, for example. You know? Why? Because it's an empire. When they created that, in 2,000 years, 500 years before Jesus Christ, they did that through might. And they continue to use might. We cannot control an empire without a powerful power. Might. Might is the army. Might is the force. Huh? Okay? We must be aware of that. But what is the best? It is the best that tomorrow China becomes a democracy. That means 57 countries. Anarchy, which is better to continue to keep them as it is for the moment. The question, I have no answer. But I think for us it's better they continue like they are. So we can continue to buy product made in China, even in the Vatican City. You go to Rome and you buy a statue of St. Peter, a statue of the Basilica, you turn, made in China. They are very Catholic. Huh? You go to Lourdes, you go, everywhere you have a beautiful statue. Before it was made in Italy. No, it is made in China. So piety has no limit. Even communist country produce holy images. No, but it's interesting, no? Officially, they are atheists. They should never produce a religious thing, but there are plenty of religious things. I'm sure if you go to a Buddhist temple, you can see made in China. Oh, okay. Now, another right of a state is the entirety. That means a state must be respected in its border. If anyone begin to take a part, like today, Russia with Ukraine, it is a right to be respected. You have a little territory. You know, it is exactly the same thing as in the regular life. Your father has a little land, and the neighbor cannot say, no, you know, I need 5 feet more. No, you have to respect the boundary. Okay? Many times, the conflict are about boundaries. Many times. I give you an example of that. Yes, brother.
I was just curious, why is it that Russia and Ukraine are, because once Ukraine used to be part of Russia, now Russia wants Ukraine.
No, in fact, Ukraine was always Ukraine, but it was a vassal, a client during the communist regime of Russia, and Ukraine is the country produce wheat, food, for feeding the communist country, you know, Russia. But the problem is a part of, you know, during that time, many Russians settled in Ukraine. And now they stay in Ukraine, and in the part, a certain part of Ukraine is constituted by Ukrainian and by also descending of Russian. And those descending of Russians take they insist for the big brother to be attached to Russia. You know. Another thing also, I don't read in the mind of Putin, but someone, they say, want to reconstitute the great empire of Russia. I don't know. But what is sure, it is an infringement. They are taking a part of the territory. Hitler did the same in 1938 when he entered Czechoslovakia, and he occupied the south of Czechoslovakia because it was many Germans lived there. You know, we call the Sudets. Sudets. So many times the pretext of attacking is sometimes to occupy. It was the same when they occupied Austria. They say Austrian, they speak German, therefore they are German. Therefore they belong to us, and they invaded Austria. You know. Okay. So the entirety, you know, it's not necessary that a country be totally in autarky. You know what is autarky? Autarky, it is to be totally self-sufficient. To be in autarky, for example, you can make your shoes, you can make your shirt, you can make your food, you can do everything without using nothing from outside of your country. That is autarky. Autarky is not a reality. Nobody, no nation, no country can live in autarky. We depend always on another for food or for products, for people also. We need the fact, for example, in France and Germany, because there are no children, they have Muslims coming from Turkey, from Algeria, from Morocco, and autarky is not a reality, it's impossible. During the Cold War, if you went to Montreal, seaport, continually 12 months a year, you have Russian sheep there, feeding the ship with wheat. So even Russia was very powerful, they depend on Canada for food. And like something depend on for oil, you know. Okay? China depends on the country for oil. So we are not in autarky. When we speak about entirety, we don't speak about the capacity of being independent from others. We are independent in right, but in fact we are dependent. It's the same for you, for each of us. I am independent, but I depend on the cook. I go to Walmart. I depend on the cash and the server, the people. I go to the dentist. We depend. I am independent, but in fact I am very dependent. I am independent in my right, in my will, but in fact I depend on another. That is a relation. Another right important is property. State has the right to possess land, to possess property. So usually we recognize the richness in the soil of a country as its property. For example, a country has oil that belongs to the country. Another country cannot say, I need oil, I take your oil. No. Yeah, that is property. Okay? What we spoke about property at the level of individual, it is the same at the level of state. And further faculty speak about colonization. Oh, now we can say it is obsolete, we don't speak about that, no more. Treaties, when we speak about international relations, we speak about treaties between countries. It can be for many things. For example, Canada, United States, and Mexico, we have a treaty we call NAFTA. NAFTA. In French, ALENA. That is an economic treaty, but also it includes a possibility of exchange of person. It is on that they work to have my new status as a teacher next year, because my visa expired. So the lawyer is working to obtain for me a visa from NAFTA. And the treaty of NAFTA. It's a treaty, economic treaty. Yes, brother.
Father, it seems to me that, the international relations nowadays just mainly based on the treaties, not based on, the natural principles like geographically or even historically. Because, taking Siberia, for example, they, in fact, geographically, they belong to, Europe. But then nobody considers Siberia as European.
Yeah, it's on the side of Asia.
Or South Russia. People, don't consider them as European.
Yeah.
But geographically, they belong to Europe.
Yes, but the division Europe and Asia is artificial. No? We can divide like that. It's like America. North America, Central. You say, I am an American. Be careful. A Cuban is an American. A Peruvian is an American. A Canadian is an American. We are all American. We are the United States of America, a part of America. I agree with you that in the fact the relations between countries are based on treaties. But when you have a treaty, what obliges you to respect the treaty? Your conscience. Your conscience. That means, anyway, the foundation of any treaty is natural law. Even if you don't want to recognize that, when you go to the store and you pay $10 for a thing, you do that because you obey your conscience. And when you obey your conscience, you obey natural law. Finally, even if people don't recognize that, in fact, they are obliged to go to the conscience of the people. Because we have no army obliging you to respect the treaty between two countries. It is a call to your conscience. It is a call. And the next paragraph, I will. More and more, instead of competing, we should help one another. Development. The encyclical of Paul VI about development progressio populorum. we should develop friendship instead of developing rivalry. No? Develop friendship between nations. No? In that we see that there is an earthquake in China, American, Russian, they go there to help. That is beautiful. You know, not everything is bad. In the international relations, they are very good thing also. But usually we don't underline the good thing. The news, they never say good news. We consider that bad news. Huh? At 6:30, NBC, bad news. There is only one good news at the end, but the rest is, most of the time, is bad news. Murder, fight, injustice, etc. So there is a duty of justice, but also for a Christian, our internal relations are more than justice. They are based on love and charity. And there is no peace if there is no true trust. And to trust one another, two countries must have a kind of love, respect for one another. If our relations are based on friendship, for example, it's true, Canada, United States, we have relations based on friendship, even if in 1812 we fought, but after that we are friends. You know, it's the same now, Vietnam in the United States. The relation now is based on friendship. Huh? Okay? And one of the problems, and opposing that kind of friendship, is the problem of nationalism. I mean, those who insist so much on their identity that they destroy the international relations. A good example of that is fascism. Fascism. And fascism, you have two names, Hitler and Mussolini. Huh? They insisted so much on the identity that those who were not Aryan or authentic, they were Jews and other Gypsy, and they put aside. And you know, the same problem happened today. If you don't think like someone, you are put outside. And so the right of intervention, how a country can intervene in another country, first one, if they are invited to do that. Secondly, one, it is for the common good of the world. So you know the problem in Syria, when they kill Christians by the 100, it is how we are allowed to enter that. Why? What is the reason for that? You know, and the people don't move. And during that time, Christians are killed. And you know what happened in Kenya? 48 students, no? In a Christian university, they were killed. So the right of intervention is very touchy. It's the reason why in the United Nations they have an organism for that we call the security. Huh? They have a group and they have to watch the security. There are 15 nations in that. And those 15 nations, they should be to see what is the situation of injustice in the world, to try to find a solution. But it is very difficult to move because some countries have a right of veto. France, Germany, England, Russia, China, and United States, they have the right of veto. Even if 99 say yes, they can say no, and everything is done. And that is history. So it should be interesting for you to, during your vacation, maybe to study a little bit about the United Nations, because you will understand maybe better the situation in the world, and understand also what is the injustice in the world. There is a lot of injustice. So next class, we'll see those situations: war, peace, and the poor and the rich, and globalization. God bless. And the text here is a foundation of the class for the